Commander Zalaxian of the Voraxian Empire stood on the bridge of the quantum supremacy, his primary sensory tentacles twitching with barely contained amusement as he reviewed the scan results of Earth's defensive capabilities. The holographic display before him showed a pathetic array of what these humans called satellites, primitive chunks of metal floating through space like space debris that hadn't gotten the memo to fall back to their planet. Commander, his science officer Nexus 427 chirped, their crystalline form refracting the ambient light in patterns of barely contained mirth. You simply must see these readings. The humans are still using SNRK. Binary computing systems. Zalaxian's secondary breathing sacs expanded with suppressed laughter. Binary? As in ones and zeros? Next you'll tell me they're still using silicon-based processors. Actually, Sir, Nexus 427's crystalline structure flickered with what could only be described as the alien equivalent of trying not to laugh during a presentation. They are. The bridge crew burst into unmistakable chittering laughter, their advanced neural interfaces automatically sharing the joke across their collective consciousness. A few junior officers had to excuse themselves to the meditation chamber to regain their composure. Show me their most advanced defensive system, Zalaxian commanded, wiping a drop of amusement fluid from his primary optical sensor. The holographic display shifted to show Earth's nuclear arsenal. Nexus 427 had to take a moment to settle their crystalline structure before reporting, they're still splitting atoms, sir. Not even combining them, just splitting them, like juveniles playing with building blocks. And their delivery systems. Chemical propulsion, sir. They literally throw their weapons through the atmosphere, with rockets, powered by explosions. Zalaxian's tentacles coiled in disbelief. How charmingly prehistoric. And their most advanced targeting systems. The ship's AI, Quantum-Mind-V12.4.2, interjected with its perfectly modulated voice. Their targeting systems rely on radar and infrared signatures. Commander. They have not yet developed even basic quantum entanglement tracking. Their most sophisticated computers would struggle to calculate a simple 11-dimensional spacefold. Fascinating, Zalaxian mused, activating his ship's quantum shield array with a casual thought. The shield, comprised of countless subatomic particles existing simultaneously in multiple dimensional states, hummed with power that could shrug off a supernova. And these are the beings that half the galaxy fears. The ones that other species warn about in their tactical briefings. He glided closer to the viewing screen, his tentacles spread wide in a gesture of magnanimous superiority. Begin the standard pre-conquest scan of their defense networks. I want to document this properly for the Imperial Archives. It should serve as an amusing case study in primitive technological development. Quantum-Mind-V12.4.2 began the scan, its quantum processors easily interfacing with Earth's primitive digital networks. Scan initiated. High Commander, their encryption is. Oh my, they're using something called RSA. It's practically written in crayon. Record everything Zalaxian commanded, settling into his command podium. Every laughably outdated protocol, every quaint attempt at security. The Empire's academies will get quite a chuckle out of this. To think some species actually suggested we approach Earth with caution. The massive screens of the quantum supremacy lit up with streams of Earth's digital data, its primitive code scrolling past like ancient hieroglyphics to the advanced alien senses. None of them noticed that among the streams of ones and zeros, a small subroutine labeled ping.exe had just activated on a distant Earth server. High Commander Nexus 427 announced, I've compiled a list of their most sophisticated weapons. Shall I display them? Please do. We could all use another laugh before we begin the conquest. As the list appeared before them, the bridge crew's collective amusement reached new heights. Kinetic energy weapons, conventional explosives, and even something called a cybersecurity division, it was all so charmingly obsolete. Little did they know that sometimes, the oldest tricks work best precisely because they're too ancient to be remembered. Raven Martinez was having the kind of day that made her miss her black hat days. At least back then, when she spotted something weird in a network, she could just hack it and figure out what it was. Now, working for the Pentagon Cyber Command, everything required paperwork, in triplicate. You're telling me nobody else is seeing this, she muttered, watching streams of anomalous data flutter across her monitors. Her mechanical keyboard, a prized IBM Model M from 1986, clacked away as she tracked the strange patterns. It's like someone's scanning our networks with something that's not even using TCP/IP. Her office mate, Dr. Marcus Chen, rolled his chair over. You know how it is with the new quantum encryption protocols we're testing. Probably just packet loss. Packet loss doesn't look like this. Raven's fingers danced across the ancient keyboard. This looks like... Okay, you're going to think I'm crazy, but it looks like something's trying to read our networks without understanding how networks actually work. Like if you tried to read a book by analyzing the chemical composition of the ink. Marcus leaned closer, his coffee forgotten. That's not possible. Tell that to whatever's doing this. She pulled up another window, this one showing traffic to military satellites. Look at this. Something's pinging our entire defense network, but it's not using any protocol I've ever seen. It's like... She froze mid-sentence as every screen in the cybersecurity command center suddenly flickered. The massive wall displays turned to static before resolving into an image that made several analysts drop their coffee cups. A creature that looked like someone had tried to crossbreed an octopus with a crystal chandelier appeared on screen. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. People of Earth, Commander Zylaxian's tentacles waved in what he probably thought was a graceful manner. We are the Voraxian Empire. Your primitive civilization has been selected for incorporation into our vastly superior society. Resistance would be. He paused, clearly enjoying the moment, adorably futile. Raven's fingers never stopped moving across her keyboard. While everyone else stared at the alien, she was tracking the signal source. They're broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously, she whispered to Marcus. But they're using our own satellites to do it. They just reached in and took control like our security didn't exist. The alien continued its speech, but Raven was more interested in what was happening behind the scenes. Her custom-built network monitoring tools were showing impossible things. Quantum fluctuations in fiber optic cables. Subatomic particles changing states inside silicon chips. It was like someone had decided to ignore the rules of classical computing entirely. We will now demonstrate the futility of resistance, the alien announced with what seemed to be genuine glee. Observe. Every screen switched to a live feed of Fort Bragg. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, every electronic device within the base simply stopped. Tanks sat dead in their tracks. Communications went dark. Even the backup generators failed to kick in. Jesus, Marcus breathed. They just turned it off. All of it. But Raven wasn't watching the base. She was watching her network monitors. No, she said slowly, a grin spreading across her face. They didn't just turn it off. Look at this packet capture. They tried to interface directly with the base's quantum-hardened networks, but they had to translate their commands through our regular systems first. Which means they don't know how to talk to our primitive technology directly. They have to sort of. Guess at how it works. Her grin widened. They're trying to quantum compute their way through systems that run on plain old electricity. It's like trying to use a laser to play a vinyl record. The alien was still talking, laying out terms of surrender, when General Helena Rodriguez burst into the Cyber Command Center. Someone tell me what the hell is happening to my base. Mom, Raven called out, not taking her eyes off her screens. I think I know why they're calling us primitive. Enlighten me, Martinez the general snapped, watching as the alien listed off increasingly condescending terms of surrender. They're too advanced. Raven's keyboard clacked faster. Their entire system is based on quantum computing. They don't even have regular computers anymore, which means... She hit enter with a flourish, and for just a fraction of a second, the alien's transmission hiccuped. The creature's tentacles twitched in what might have been surprise. Which means, Raven continued, her grin now decidedly predatory, they have absolutely no defense against old-school hacking. They're so advanced, they're vulnerable to attacks they consider too primitive to even think about. General Rodriguez leaned over Raven's shoulder, watching as lines of classic DOS commands scrolled across one screen. Are you telling me, she said slowly, that we can hack them with technology they consider obsolete. Better than that, Raven cracked her knuckles. I'm telling you, they're scanning our military networks looking for quantum signatures and advanced AI, while completely ignoring the fact that half our critical systems still run on COBOL and Pascal. The alien's voice boomed again. You have one Earth rotation to surrender. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate demonstration of our superior weaponry. General Raven said, pulling up a command prompt that looked like it belonged in the 1980s. I'm going to need authorization to do something incredibly stupid. And I'm going to need access to every legacy system we've got, especially the really old stuff. General Rodriguez watched the alien preen on screen for a moment before nodding. Do it. Show these quantum-brain squids what human hackers can do with stone knives and bearskins. Yes, Mom. Raven's fingers flew across her ancient keyboard. Time to teach them why sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Let me get this straight, Admiral Jackson said, staring at Raven across the hastily assembled war room table. Your plan to defeat an advanced alien civilization is to send them a computer virus. Not just any virus, Raven replied, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. We're talking about the most beautiful collection of obsolete malware ever assembled. I Love You, Melissa coded every classic virus that ever gave a system administrator nightmares. The collection of military brass exchanged skeptical looks. On the monitors behind them, reports streamed in of alien ships systematically shutting down Earth's satellite network. Each disabled satellite became another relay for their quantum communications. With all due respect, MS Martinez, General Wong interjected, these aliens can disable military installations with a thought. They're using quantum computing. Their AI probably invented AI, and you want to fight them with computer viruses from the 1990s. Raven pulled up a holographic display of her network analysis. That's exactly why it'll work. Look at these scans of their systems. Everything they do is quantum-based. Their computers don't process information, they exist in states of quantum probability. They don't have programs, they have quantum algorithms that exist in multiple states simultaneously. You're not helping your case, Admiral Jackson noted dryly. Don't you see? They're too advanced. Raven stood up, pacing as she warmed to her subject. Their systems are designed to defend against quantum hacking, proto-dimensional data warfare, and AI-driven attacks. Traditional computer viruses. It's like they skipped over that entire stage of development. She pulled up another display, this one showing the alien scan patterns. Look how they interface with our systems. They have to quantum translate everything. Their AI doesn't understand binary computing because it's too simple. It's looking for complexity that isn't there. MS Martinez, General Rodriguez cut in. The aliens are currently dismantling our entire orbital defense network. In the time we've been having this conversation, we've lost 30 more satellites. Exactly, Raven exclaimed. And how are they doing it? They're reaching in with quantum tendrils, expecting to find quantum-secured systems. But our satellites are basically just fancy radio repeaters with some basic computers attached. They're not finding what they expect, so they're having to brute force their way through. She typed a few commands, bringing up a classic DOS prompt that made several younger officers wince. Watch this. This is a simulation of what happens when you introduce a classic computer virus into their quantum translation layer. The simulation ran. Several officers leaned forward despite themselves. On the screen, a simple virus, nothing more than a few kilobytes of basic code, hit the quantum translation system. The alien quantum computers, trying to understand the code, automatically began calculating all possible states the virus could exist in simultaneously. The processing load grew exponentially as the simple virus forced the quantum systems to try to calculate every possible path through its code simultaneously. Holy shit, muttered a junior officer. It's like giving a supercomputer an infinite loop, except their quantum computers can't ignore any possibilities. Raven finished. They have to calculate everything. A simple virus forces them to spawn infinite quantum states. Their own computational superiority becomes their weakness. Another bank of monitors flashed red. More satellites gone. The aliens were getting closer to their critical communications infrastructure. It's too simple, General Wong protested. They'll see it coming. No, they won't, Raven insisted. Because they literally can't. Their systems are too advanced to recognize something this primitive as a threat. It's like having an advanced AI that can detect any poison, but can't comprehend someone just hitting it with a rock. She pulled up another window, this one showing lines of ancient basic code. I've already tested it on a small scale. That hiccup in their first transmission? That was me hitting them with a single line of Godot code. Their quantum AI tried to calculate all possible states of an infinite loop. It's like dividing by zero, but at a quantum level. Admiral Jackson rubbed his temples. You want to fight an advanced alien invasion with the digital equivalent of throwing rocks? Yes, Raven exclaimed. Because they've forgotten how to defend against rocks. They're so focused on quantum shields and multidimensional firewalls that they don't have any defense against simple, brute force attacks. The room fell silent as another bank of satellites went dark. The alien ships were methodically working their way through Earth's orbital infrastructure, probably seeing it as nothing more than cleaning up space junk. General Rodriguez studied the virus simulation again. How would you deliver it? They control most of our satellite network now. Raven's grin turned predatory. That's the beautiful part. They're using our own satellites to coordinate their attack, right? But they're having to quantum interface with our primitive systems to do it. Every satellite they take over becomes a potential vector for us. She typed rapidly, bringing up a new display. I've modified these classic viruses to hide in plain sight. To their quantum scanners, they'll look like normal satellite control protocols, just more primitive human code to translate. But once they try to quantum process it, their own overcomplicated systems will do our work for us. General Rodriguez finished, beginning to smile despite herself. Exactly. And the best part? The more processing power they throw at it, the worse it gets for them. Their quantum computers will try to brute force their way through what they see as primitive code, spawning more and more quantum states until they either shut down or suffer the quantum computing equivalent of a blue screen of death. Admiral Jackson said slowly. Kind of puts a new spin on the old task, failed successfully error, doesn't it? Raven quipped. Another alert sounded. The aliens had reached the military communications satellites. Earth's orbital infrastructure was being systematically dismantled by beings who probably saw it as nothing more than clearing away cobwebs. We're running out of time, General Rodriguez noted. If we're going to try something, it needs to be now. Admiral Jackson looked around the room, then back at the simulation still running on the main screen. The simple virus was still forcing the simulated quantum system to spawn more and more probability states, growing exponentially with each cycle. Ms. Martinez, he said finally, I can't believe I'm saying this, but upload your viruses. Hit them with everything we've got. Every piece of malicious code from the last 40 years of computing. Raven's fingers were already flying across her keyboard. Yes, sir. Time to show these quantum squids why sometimes the best weapon is a really simple stick. On screen, the aliens continued their methodical dismantling of Earth's satellite network, completely unaware that they were about to learn a very important lesson about the dangers of underestimating primitive technology. Initiating Operation Legacy Code. Raven announced, her fingers dancing across her mechanical keyboard like a pianist at Carnegie Hall. Uploading first-wave viruses to compromised satellites. Now. On the quantum supremacy, Commander Zylaxian was preparing to demonstrate their superweapon, a device capable of manipulating probability itself, when Nexus 427's crystalline form suddenly flickered in distress. High Commander, they chittered nervously. I'm detecting some strange data patterns in our satellite control interfaces. Insignificant Zylaxian waved a dismissive tentacle. Their primitive binary systems occasionally generate random noise. The quantum translators will clean it up. Back in the Pentagon's Cyber Command Center, Raven watched her first wave of attacks hit the alien network. They're taking the bait, she grinned. Uploading I love you variant now. The alien quantum computers, designed to process infinite possibilities simultaneously, encountered something they'd never been programmed to handle: a simple male worm that did exactly what it said it would do. No quantum uncertainty involved. High Commander, Nexus 427's crystalline structure was now pulsing with alarmed frequencies. The quantum processors are there. Speak clearly, officer. They're trying to calculate all possible states of a program that just says go to 10 over and over. The probability matrices are growing exponentially. Raven's grin widened as she watched the alien system struggle. Time for Wave 2. Uploading Morris Worm, Melissa, and coded variants. Let's see how they handle some real classics. In space, the alien ship's quantum processors encountered something that defied their advanced logic programs that weren't trying to be clever, weren't operating on quantum principles, and simply brute forced their way through systems with all the subtlety of a digital sledgehammer. What do you mean? Insufficient quantum states, Xylaxian demanded as warning signals began flashing across his command interface. We have infinite quantum processing power. That's the problem. Sir Nexus 427 was practically vibrating now. The systems are trying to calculate every possible path through these primitive programs, but they're designed to be inefficient. They're forcing us to spawn new quantum states for every possible iteration. Raven's keyboard clacked rhythmically as she launched the next phase. Now uploading modified Stuxnet. Let's see how their quantum shields handle a virus designed to make nuclear centrifuges malfunction. The alien fleet's quantum shields, designed to exist in multiple defensive states simultaneously, encountered code that simply asked them to spin really fast. The quantum processors, unable to determine if this was a threat or not, tried to calculate every possible outcome of varying rotation speeds across infinite quantum states. The shields are grinding, sir, an alien officer reported in panic. They're actually grinding. How can quantum shields grind? Impossible. Xylaxian's tentacles writhed in agitation. These are primitive binary attacks. Quantum mind, analyze and neutralize. The ship's AI responded with an unusual stutter. Processing. Error, insufficient memory. Stack overflow in quantum matrix. Attempting to calculate all possible states of print hello world end program. Raven actually laughed out loud as she launched her next wave. Classic buffer overflow attacks coming right up. Let's see how quantum computers handle getting more data than they expected. The alien systems, accustomed to elegant quantum algorithms that existed in multiple states of perfection, were now being bombarded with programs that just kept shoving data into memory without checking if there was room for it. Commander, a junior officer's crystalline form was almost liquid with panic. The quantum processors are detecting a program called DOS.exe and they're trying to calculate every possible command prompt input simultaneously. What in the name of the infinite probability is a bad command or file name, and why are our quantum cores generating trillion state matrices to process it? Another officer shrieked. Raven was in her element now, uploading viruses that hadn't seen use since the dawn of the internet age. Time for the finishing touch. Uploading a special gift, every single variation of the fork bomb that's ever been written. The alien quantum computers, already struggling to process the infinite possibilities of simple Godot loops and buffer overflows, now encountered programs designed to replicate themselves endlessly. Their quantum processors, programmed to consider every possible outcome, tried to calculate every possible copy of every possible variant across every possible quantum state. The quantum core is approaching critical probability collapse, Nexus 427 reported. We're detecting something called a blue screen of death propagating through our translation matrices. Impossible, Xylaxian roared. How can their primitive binary weapons penetrate our quantum defenses? Quantum mind, explain. The ship's AI responded with what could only be described as a digital whimper. Fatal error, quantum state calculator overflow. Unable to process infinite recursion of format C. Unable to determine if command is legitimate request or hostile action across infinite probability space. System stability compromised. Would you like to install Windows 95? What's a Windows 95? Xylaxian demanded, just as every screen in his ship filled with a cascade of error messages written in DOS prompt style. Back on Earth, Raven watched with satisfaction as the alien fleet's sophisticated quantum networks began to collapse under the weight of trying to process what, to them, must have seemed like digital cave paintings. They're launching quantum countermeasures, Marcus reported, watching his own screens. Good, Raven grinned. That means their systems are trying to quantum compute their way out of this, which means uploading final package now. She hit enter with a flourish, sending her coup de grace a collection of programs that appeared to be simple game ROMs from the 1980s, but were actually hiding sophisticated fork bombs in their seemingly primitive code. The alien quantum computers, already struggling to process the infinite possibilities of simple viruses, now face programs that appeared to be nothing more than primitive entertainment software. Their quantum cores, programmed to analyze every possible game state simultaneously, tried to calculate every possible move, every possible score, and every possible outcome of games designed to be endless. High Commander Nexus 427's voice had risen to a panic-stricken screech. The quantum processors are reporting they've encountered something called Pac-Man and are attempting to calculate all possible maze configurations across infinite dimensional space. Status of the superweapon Zylaxian demanded. Sir, it's trying to calculate the quantum probability states of something called Snake and has locked into an infinite recursive loop. The probability matrices are cascading. Raven watched as the alien fleet's sophisticated quantum networks began to light up with catastrophic failures. Their quantum processors, capable of calculating the outcome of battles across infinite probable universes, were being utterly undone by the digital equivalent of pointy sticks. That's the thing about quantum computing, she said to no one in particular as she watched her ancient viruses wreak havoc across the alien fleet. Sometimes you're so busy looking for threats in 11 dimensions that you forget to check for someone throwing rocks. The alien ship's quantum cores, one by one, began to crash as they encountered more and more primitive code that their advanced systems simply couldn't process. Their quantum shields, designed to defend against weapons that could alter the fabric of reality itself, had no defense against programs that simply asked them to divide by zero. Should we upload the finishing touch? Marcus asked, grinning. Raven nodded, typing one final command. Uploading now a special version of Tetris that's actually a disguised fork bomb. Let's see their quantum processors handle calculating every possible way to stack blocks. Forever. On the quantum supremacy, Zylaxian watched in horror as his fleet's sophisticated systems were brought to their knees by what amounted to digital archaeology. The last thing he heard before his ship's quantum core went critical was his AI trying desperately to calculate the final score of an endless game of Tetris across infinite quantum states. Warning: stack overflow in quantum matrix. Tetris.exe has performed an illegal operation. Would you like to send an error report to Microsoft? Raven sat back in her chair, watching the alien fleet's quantum networks collapse under the weight of trying to process tools and techniques that humanity had considered obsolete for decades. And she said, taking a sip of her now cold coffee, is why sometimes the best weapon isn't the most advanced one. It's the one your enemy has forgotten how to defend against. Commander Zylaxian stood amidst the chaos of his flagship's bridge. His tentacles twisted in knots of pure horror as he watched his mighty superweapon, the probability cascade cannon, try to initialize its firing sequence. The weapon, designed to alter the quantum state of entire planets, was instead locked in an endless loop trying to execute a simple basic program that just kept printing all your base are belong to us across its quantum interface. Status of the fleet, he demanded, his voice cracking with desperation. Nexus 427's crystalline form had developed a distinct crack from the stress. Sir, we've lost quantum coherence across all ships. The primitive viruses have infected everything. Even our backup systems are. They paused, horror evident in their fluctuating crystalline structure. They're playing something called Minesweeper and trying to calculate every possible mine configuration in infinite dimensional space. The superweapon's core began to pulse with an ominous rhythm. On every screen across the bridge, the same message flashed in primitive SCE characters. Copy probability cascade cannon.exe has encountered a fatal error. Attempting to calculate all possible states of ping 127.0.0.1t. Quantum core overload imminent. Shut it down, Zylaxian screamed. Shut everything down. We can't, sir. The quantum processors are locked in deterministic loops. They keep trying to resolve the quantum states of programs that aren't quantum at all. They just do exactly what they say they'll do. On Earth, Raven watched with satisfaction as the alien fleet's sophisticated quantum network collapsed into chaos. Her network monitors showed their quantum processors failing one by one, each brought down by programs so simple they predated the internet itself. "Their superweapon is trying to boot," Marcus reported, watching his own screens. "They're attempting to initialize their quantum probability matrices." Raven's grin turned predatory. "Perfect. Uploading final payload, a modified version of the original Pokemon Red ROM with a fork bomb hidden in the battle system." Back on the quantum supremacy, Xylaxian watched in abject horror as his mighty superweapon, capable of rewriting the quantum probability of entire star systems, became hopelessly entangled trying to calculate every possible outcome of a simulated monster-catching game. "The quantum core is cascading," Nexus 427 screamed. "It's generating infinite probability matrices trying to determine optimal catching strategies for something called a Pikachu." The superweapon's sophisticated quantum processors, designed to calculate and manipulate the very fabric of reality, were now helplessly trapped in computational loops, trying to resolve the simplest of human codes. Their quantum shields, meant to defend against weapons that could tear holes in space-time, had no defense against programs written when computers had less processing power than a modern toaster. How Xylaxian whispered as his mighty fleet was brought to its knees by technology that humanity had considered obsolete before they'd even reached their moon. How could we have missed this? The answer flashed across his command screen in simple green text. "Copy 10 print, because sometimes the old ways work best. 20 Godot 10. His quantum processors, trying to calculate all possible states of this simple loop across infinite quantum possibilities, finally reached critical overload. The last thing Commander Xylaxian saw before his mighty flagship systems crashed completely was a smiling face made of C characters, followed by the most terrifying message his advanced civilization had ever encountered. "Copy, press Ctrl Alt Del to restart." From the ruins of his quantum empire's greatest defeat, Xylaxian learned a lesson that would be passed down through generations of space-faring civilizations. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the most advanced one, it's the one so simple that you've forgotten it could be a weapon at all. In the aftermath of what would become known as the Legacy Code War, the surviving alien ships limped away from Earth's orbit, their quantum systems permanently compromised by programs written when disco was still popular. Their retreat was tracked by the very satellite network they'd tried to dismantle, now restored and running better than ever, thanks to some creative applications of decades-old debugging techniques. Reports spread quickly through the galactic community. Earth was not to be trifled with, not because of advanced weapons or superior technology, but because they had maintained an arsenal that was so obsolete it had looped right back around to being cutting edge again. In the weeks that followed, intercepted alien communications revealed that the Voraxian Empire had issued a new directive: all ships were to be equipped with primitive defense systems, essentially quantum computers running DOS emulators. The ultimate indignity for a civilization that had mastered 11-dimensional space travel. As the last alien ship disappeared from Earth's sensors, Raven Martinez sent one final message, broadcast on all frequencies in simple basic code. "Copy 10 print, next time bring better antivirus. 20 print, regards, Earth. 30 end." The message was followed by a small text file instructions for downloading Norton Antivirus 95, just in case they needed it. After all, it was always good to share primitive technology with less advanced civilizations.